In 2009, a respected Muslim Imam in Beirut's most dangerous neighborhood spent 6 months helping Israeli intelligence identify Hezbollah operatives hiding inside his own mosque. He never knew he was doing it. Sheikh Hassan al-Madani was 47 years old when the phone call came. November 2008. A polite voice speaking classical Arabic with a Damascus accent. The man introduced himself as Faisal Hammoud,
We need to move
a Syrian
forward
Lebanese businessman
as
calling
planned.
from Dubai. His mother had recently passed away. In her will, she had instructed him to support religious institutions across Lebanon. Your mosque, he said, was on her list. Sheikh Hassan didn't believe him. Beirut had taught him that charity always came with conditions, especially charity that arrived by phone from strangers in foreign cities. He thanked the man politely and assumed he would never hear from him again. But Faisal called back the following week. He offered specifics this time. $15,000 for structural repairs, $2,000 monthly for community programs, medical assistance for families in need. He asked nothing in return except the chance to fulfill his mother's final wishes. The timing was impossible to ignore. Sheikh Hassan's mosque needed those repairs desperately. Cracks ran through the eastern wall. The plumbing failed twice monthly. His own daughter required surgery in Turkey that he couldn't afford. He had applied for loans from 3 Lebanese banks. All 3 had rejected him. When Faisal offered to visit Beirut to discuss the arrangement in person, Sheikh Hassan agreed to meet him. The man who arrived 2 weeks later looked nothing like Sheikh Hassan expected. Faisal was in his early 40s, conservatively dressed, soft-spoken. He stayed in a Christian neighborhood rather than a Muslim one. He attended Friday prayers at the mosque but sat in the middle rows, never drawing attention. He spoke respectfully about religious matters but avoided political topics entirely. When Sheikh Hassan mentioned Hezbollah's social programs in the area, Faisal simply nodded and changed the subject to mosque attendance patterns. The money arrived exactly as promised, through a legitimate Lebanese bank, from accounts that checked out. The renovation began in January 2009. Sheikh Hassan's daughter received her treatment. Faisal visited monthly after that, always staying 2 or 3 days, always bringing the cash contribution personally rather than wiring it, always asking gentle questions that seemed to come from genuine interest in the community's well-being. How is attendance? Are new families joining? Do you notice anyone who seems isolated or troubled? Sheikh Hassan answered honestly. These felt like the questions any thoughtful patron would ask. Questions about spiritual health, community connection, pastoral challenges. He mentioned the quiet men who prayed in the back rows but never spoke during tea. He noted that several younger worshippers had stopped attending suddenly. He observed that some members arrived for prayers but never participated in community events. Faisal listened carefully, occasionally asking follow-up questions. Do the quiet ones arrive together? When did the younger members stop coming? Do any worshippers seem burdened by something they cannot discuss? The conversations felt natural, pastoral, the kind of discussions Sheikh Hassan would have with any concerned supporter trying to understand the community he was helping. But in March 2009, something changed. One of the quiet men approached Sheikh Hassan after Friday prayers. His name was Abu Salim. He was polite but direct. We've noticed the renovations, he said, the improvements. Someone is supporting your work. Sheikh Hassan explained about Faisal, the Syrian businessman, the inheritance money, the monthly contributions. Abu Salim nodded slowly. And he visits from Dubai each month for a mosque in Haret Reich? Yes, he's fulfilling his mother's wishes. His mother specifically mentioned your mosque in her will? Sheikh Hassan felt something shift in the room's temperature. When Abu Salim asked for Faisal's full name, phone number, and business details, he provided them. Refusing would have been more suspicious than complying. Abu Salim thanked him and left. That night, Sheikh Hassan lay awake reconstructing every conversation he'd had with Faisal. The questions that had seemed pastoral now felt different in his memory. The pattern of visits, the cash payments, the gentle curiosity about specific worshippers. He realized he couldn't answer a simple question. Why would a wealthy businessman in Dubai personally deliver charitable contributions to a small mosque in Hezbollah's stronghold when a bank transfer would be safer, easier, and more efficient? 2 weeks later, Faisal called to schedule his next visit. Sheikh Hassan agreed, but for the first time since they'd met, he wondered whether the man he was speaking to was really named Faisal Hamud at all. Abu Salim returned 3 days before Faisal's scheduled visit. This time, he brought someone with him, a younger man who didn't give his name. They sat in Sheikh Hassan's small office behind the prayer hall and asked questions for 40 minutes. Tell us again about Faisal. How did he find your mosque specifically? What does he ask about during his visits? Has he ever requested documents or photographs? Does he meet with anyone else while he's in Beirut? Sheikh Hassan answered everything truthfully because he had nothing to hide. Faisal had called offering charity. He asked about community well-being. He never requested anything unusual. He stayed in Christian neighborhoods and kept to himself. The younger man took notes. Abu Salim watched Sheikh Hassan's face the entire time. Before they left, Abu Salim said something that stayed with Sheikh Hassan for days afterward. Be careful, Sheikh. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who ask questions that sound innocent. Sometimes charity is the cover, not the motive. When Faisal arrived the following week, he wasn't alone either. He brought a Syrian man who introduced himself as Major Karim from Damascus Mukhabarat. The major carried a leather folder containing Faisal's business registration, tax documents, and family records. He explained that Syrian intelligence had received inquiries about Faisal's charitable activities in Lebanon. Standard procedure, nothing concerning. They met with Abu Salim at a cafe in Dahieh. The major was professionally annoyed. He produced each document methodically. Business licenses, banking statements, his mother's death certificate and will. Everything appeared legitimate. Everything checked out. Abu Salim apologized for the inconvenience. He explained that Hezbollah needed to be cautious about foreign money in sensitive neighborhoods, even charitable money, especially charitable money. The meeting ended cordially, but when Sheikh Hassan returned to the mosque that evening, he understood something that made his hands shake as he locked the doors. The Syrian officer had been too prepared, too thorough. He had anticipated exactly which documents would be questioned and brought precisely those records. Not copies, originals. As if he had known about Abu Salim's investigation before it happened, which meant either Faisal had warned Syrian intelligence in advance, or Syrian intelligence had been watching Faisal's activities in Lebanon closely enough to intervene the moment questions were raised. Either possibility suggested this was far more complex than a businessman fulfilling his mother's wishes. Sheikh Hassan spent that night reviewing every conversation he'd had with Faisal. Not the words themselves, but the pattern beneath them. Faisal always asked about newcomers to the mosque. He asked about people who stopped attending. He asked about worshippers who seemed disconnected or secretive. These were pastoral questions, but they were also intelligence questions, and Sheikh Hassan had answered them all. He had mentioned the quiet men by name. He had described their prayer schedules. He had noted which families had connections to Hezbollah social programs and which kept their distance. He had identified every person in his congregation who exhibited unusual behavior. If Faisal was collecting intelligence, Sheikh Hassan had given him a complete map of the mosque's social architecture. But if he stopped talking to Faisal now, the funding would end. The renovation would remain unfinished. His daughter's medical treatments would stop. And Abu Salim would know that Sheikh Hassan had suspected something and chosen to act on that suspicion. That decision would raise more questions than continuing the relationship. During Faisal's next visit in April, Sheikh Hassan tested him. He mentioned casually that Abu Salim had asked about specific worshippers, the quiet men in the back rows. He watched Faisal's face for any reaction beyond polite concern. Faisal responded perfectly. He expressed worry that the mosque might be attracting troubled individuals who could damage its reputation. Perhaps you should keep some distance from anyone who seems secretive, he suggested, for the mosque's protection. It was exactly what an innocent donor would say. It was also exactly what an intelligence operative would say to encourage continued reporting while appearing concerned for Sheikh Hassan's safety. Sheikh Hassan left that meeting understanding he had lost the ability to distinguish between genuine concern and sophisticated manipulation. Every response Faisal gave could be interpreted two ways. Every suggestion could serve two purposes. 2 weeks later, a community elder approached Sheikh Hassan after evening prayers. The man was connected to Hezbollah's social network, but not part of their security apparatus. He suggested gently that Sheikh Hassan should continue his relationship with Faisal, but perhaps be more careful about discussing specific individuals. If Faisal asks about particular worshippers, the elder said, tell him they've moved away for work, or that they're traveling. Nothing that contradicts what you've said before, but nothing that helps him identify patterns. Sheikh Hassan understood what this meant. Hezbollah believed Faisal was gathering intelligence but weren't certain for whom or why. They were allowing the relationship to continue as a controlled channel. They wanted to see what information Faisal was seeking and feed him carefully selected details, which meant Sheikh Hassan was now caught between two intelligence operations, neither of which he fully understood. That night, he considered three options. He could cut off contact with Faisal entirely and lose everything the mosque needed. He could tell Abu Salim everything he suspected and become an active participant in whatever counterintelligence operation Hezbollah was running. Or he could continue exactly as he had been, answering questions honestly while protecting the obvious security risks. He chose the third option, not out of loyalty to either side, but because it was the only choice that didn't require him to admit he had been deceived. But as May turned to June, Sheikh Hassan began noticing something else. The quiet men in the back rows were changing. New faces appeared. Old ones vanished. The pattern of arrivals and departures shifted weekly. Someone was moving pieces around the board, and Sheikh Hassan was the only person who could see both sides playing. In early June, Sheikh Hassan made a decision that felt like protection, but was actually surrender. He would give Faisal accurate information about everyone except the men Abu Salim had specifically asked about. He would prove his information was valuable while keeping the obvious intelligence targets safe. During Faisal's June visit, Sheikh Hassan mentioned 3 new families who had joined the congregation. He described their backgrounds, occupations, neighborhood, connections, all accurate, all verifiable. He noted the 2 university students had started attending Friday prayers regularly. He explained their academic backgrounds and which professors had recommended the mosque. Faisal listened with the same gentle attention he always showed. He asked follow-up questions about the students' study schedules and whether they seemed integrated into the community or isolated. When Faisal asked about the quiet men, Sheikh Hassan said they had found construction work in the Gulf. Qatar, he thought, or maybe the Emirates. They had left suddenly, as workers often do when contracts come through. Faisal nodded and moved on to other topics. Sheikh Hassan felt the strategy had worked. He had given valuable information while protecting sensitive targets. He had maintained Faisal's trust without compromising security. He was wrong about what he had actually done. 2 weeks later, Israeli jets struck a weapons facility in southern Lebanon. The attack happened at night. Precision missiles, no casualties. The building was empty because Hezbollah had evacuated it 2 days earlier based on intelligence that suggested surveillance. Sheikh Hassan heard about the strike on the news like everyone else. He didn't connect it to his conversations with Faisal. The facility was kilometers from his mosque. He had never mentioned anything in that area, but 3 days after the strike, Faisal's monthly call didn't come. Sheikh Hassan waited. He told himself Faisal was traveling. Business delays, family matters. A week passed, then 2. The monthly contribution didn't arrive. In late June, Abu Salim appeared at the mosque with 2 other men. They weren't police, they weren't in uniform, but their presence made everyone in the prayer hall fall silent. They took Sheikh Hassan to his office and closed the door. Tell us everything about Faisal Hammoud. Every conversation, every question he asked, every detail you can remember. Sheikh Hassan talked for 3 hours. He explained the initial phone call, the renovation funding, the monthly visits, the questions about community well-being. He admitted he had wondered whether Faisal was more than a charitable donor, but had never had proof. Did he pay you beyond the mosque contributions? No. Did he ask you to write reports or take photographs? Never. Did he request information about specific individuals? Only in general terms, about integration, about who seemed troubled or isolated. Abu Salim listened without interrupting. When Sheikh Hassan finished, Abu Salim said something that made the room feel smaller. The Syrian officer who vouched for Faisal's credentials. Major Karim. Syrian intelligence has no record of him. That meeting you attended was staged. Sheikh Hassan felt his understanding of the previous 6 months collapse inward. The verification that had seemed to prove Faisal's legitimacy had actually been the moment the deception became most elaborate. The documents that appeared authentic were authentic forgeries. The official who represented Syrian intelligence was another layer of the same operation. Everything he had used to reassure himself had been manufactured specifically to create that reassurance. Abu Salim continued. The information you provided about new congregation members helped identify a Hezbollah recruitment network. The students you mentioned were being cultivated as assets. The families you described had connections to logistics operations. By telling Faisal about everyone except the obvious operatives, you gave him a map of our support infrastructure while making it appear unintentional. Sheikh Hassan started to respond, but Abu Salim held up his hand. We believe you didn't know what you were doing. Your bank records are clean. You received no payment beyond the promised support. You were a source, not an agent. The distinction felt meaningless. Sheikh Hassan had spent 6 months helping Israeli intelligence map Hezbollah networks inside his own community. The fact that he hadn't known he was doing it didn't change what he had done. But then, Abu Salim said, something unexpected. The quiet men you protected. The ones you told Faisal had left for the Gulf. They were our operatives. You thought you were protecting intelligence assets. You were actually protecting our people while exposing our recruitment infrastructure. Sheikh Hassan understood then what he had actually accomplished. He had inverted the deception. He had protected the obvious targets while assuming the innocent-seeming families and students were safe to discuss. He had given Faisal exactly the wrong information while believing he was being strategically careful. His attempt at deception had succeeded by failing in precisely the right way. Did Faisal know? Sheikh Hassan asked. Did he know I was trying to protect certain people? Abu Salim considered the question. Probably not. He thought you were being fully cooperative. That's why the operation worked. You appeared to be giving everything while actually holding back the most important pieces. For a moment, Sheikh Hassan felt something like relief, but Abu Salim wasn't finished. The problem is that your recruitment network is now compromised. The students have been relocated, the families have been moved, and several operations that depended on those connections have been canceled or redesigned. Your attempt to protect our operatives accidentally destroyed 6 months of recruitment work. The relief vanished. Sheikh Hassan had protected the wrong people while exposing the right ones. He had succeeded at the task he set for himself while failing at the task he didn't know he was supposed to be performing. Abu Salim stood to leave. One more thing, he said. Faisal called your mosque this morning. He left a message saying he had to return to Dubai for family reasons. He thanked you for your cooperation and said the funding would continue through an intermediary. Will it? Sheikh Hassan asked. No, but he doesn't know that we know. So for now, he thinks the operation is still running. After they left, Sheikh Hassan sat alone in his office until evening prayers. He had spent 6 months navigating between 2 deceptions while creating a third one accidentally. He had tried to protect his community by being strategically honest, and had instead exposed networks he didn't know existed while protecting operatives he couldn't identify. And somewhere, possibly in Dubai, possibly in Tel Aviv, possibly in a safe house in Beirut, someone named Faisal believed the operation was still active and productive. Sheikh Hassan didn't know which possibility frightened him more. The funding stopped in July 2009. The renovation remained half-finished. Exposed concrete where walls should have been completed. Plumbing connections that ended in mid-air. The eastern wall still cracked. Sheikh Hassan's daughter completed her treatment in Turkey, but the follow-up appointments were canceled. He borrowed money from relatives to cover the remaining medical costs. The debt took him 4 years to repay, but the financial consequences were the smallest part of what he lost. In August, Hezbollah's counterintelligence division completed their assessment. Sheikh Hassan had been an unwitting asset, not a deliberate collaborator. They concluded he had attempted to protect what he thought were security risks while accidentally exposing recruitment networks. His deception had been unintentional, but effective enough to cause operational damage. They allowed him to continue leading the mosque, but 3 families quietly transferred to other congregations. The university students never returned. New worshippers were screened before being allowed to attend services regularly. Sheikh Hassan understood what this meant. His mosque had been categorized as compromised territory, not dangerous enough to close, but not trusted enough to be used for sensitive community work. In September, a journalist from a Lebanese newspaper asked to interview him about foreign funding of religious institutions. Sheikh Hassan declined. The journalist published the story anyway, mentioning an unnamed Imam who had accepted thousands of dollars from a mysterious Gulf donor whose identity couldn't be verified. The article didn't name Sheikh Hassan or his mosque, but everyone in Beirut knew which institution it referenced. Attendance dropped by a third over the following 6 months. Some families left because they feared association with the compromised mosque. Others left because they believed Sheikh Hassan had knowingly collaborated with foreign intelligence. A few left because they thought he had been too naive to recognize an obvious deception. All three groups were partially correct. In early 2010, Sheikh Hassan requested a transfer to a different mosque. Hezbollah's Religious Affairs Office approved the move with unusual speed. He was assigned to a smaller institution in a mixed neighborhood. Fewer worshippers, less influence, no connection to sensitive networks. The new mosque paid less. The congregation was older, poorer, less politically connected. But no one asked him questions about donors or funding sources. No quiet men sat in the back rows. No one's attendance patterns required explanation. For the first time in 18 months, Sheikh Hassan could lead prayers without wondering who was watching and why. But he had changed in ways that made normal pastoral work impossible. When congregation members sought advice about strangers offering help, he told them to refuse. When families mentioned financial struggles, he suggested government assistance programs rather than private charity. When young men asked about supporting resistance movements, he redirected them to established community organizations with transparent leadership. He had become incapable of trusting the surface layer of any relationship. In 2013, Hezbollah's security monitoring of Sheikh Hassan ended. They concluded he posed no ongoing risk. He had been a one-time asset for a terminated operation. His current mosque had no strategic value. His influence was limited to routine religious services. Sheikh Hassan never learned that the surveillance had stopped. He continued behaving as though he was being watched because he could no longer distinguish between observation and ordinary life. The intelligence Mossad gathered through his reports contributed to operations across Lebanon and Syria for years afterward. Networks mapped through his descriptions of congregation members were cross-referenced with other sources and used to identify Hezbollah logistics patterns. 7 individuals he had mentioned to Faisal were later killed or captured in operations he never heard about. None of these outcomes were confirmed to him. He existed in a permanent state of uncertainty about what his conversations had enabled. In 2016, he was approached again by a journalist researching Israeli intelligence operations. Sheikh Hassan refused the interview. When pressed, he said only that he had tried to help his community and didn't know whether he had succeeded or failed. He retired from public religious life in 2022, 30 years after beginning his career as an imam. He lives now in a small apartment in Beirut, receives a few visitors, and maintains limited contact with former congregation members who remember him as devoted but unlucky. The half-finished renovation in his original mosque was eventually completed by a different donor in 2014. The building stands now as he always imagined it would look. Repaired walls, working plumbing, structural integrity. He has never returned to see it. The greatest cost of deception isn't what you lose while it's happening. It's the inability afterward to trust that anything is only what it appears to be. If this story surfaces questions about how intelligence operations use ordinary people without their knowledge, that discomfort is the point. These operations continue because they work. And they work because most people, like Sheikh Hassan, make decisions based on what they want to believe rather than what the pattern suggests.